Well, hello and welcome to Uncorking a Story. I'm your host, Mike Carlin, and today I'm pleased to introduce you to Kurt and Ellie Johnson. Now, Kurt and Ellie are a father-daughter combo team who have authored the book The Barrens, a novel of love and death in the Canadian Arctic. Here today to talk about that book are Kurt and Ellie Johnson. Welcome to Uncorking a Story, Kurt and Ellie.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Oh, you're welcome. Happy to have you both here. And happy to uncork the bottle on your story. The first question I always ask is, tell me, where does your story as an author begin? Kurt, I'm going to go to you first on this one. Kurt,
sure.
Where does your story begin?
I guess it begins when I went to college. I went to a place called Hampshire College. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's kind of a hippie college. I think they made fun of it for a season on SNL. At any rate, I went there to study photography. Believe it or not. And once I got there, I decided I really didn't like photography. And this woman that I knew kind of turned me on to some authors and some books. And I got real into reading, and I got real into some of these authors. And then I was coming back to school the next year, and I stopped over in New York City and went into the Empire Hotel to get a key for a hotel room. But by the time I got out, my station wagon had been broken into and my cameras were all stolen. So I did get some insurance money, and from there, instead of buying more cameras, I bought a typewriter. So that's where it started. I kind of spent 3 years after college bouncing around trying to write. I lived in New York and LA and Minneapolis, and was an elevator operator and a desk clerk and a delivery driver, a limo driver. I think I was a waiter for a long time too. And I think I just wasn't mature enough to write and really get the words down on page. So I kind of moved on with my life. I ran nightclubs in Las Vegas for about 4 or 5 years. Then I got my MBA, like you, Mike, and went on to have a kind of a corporate and entrepreneurial career. And I sold my business about 7 years ago, and then I started writing. I've always wanted to get back to writing. And so that's what I picked up. And, the first thing I did was just kind of write a memoir that wasn't very good, but at least it showed that I could bang out 1,500 words a day and do a novel. And then I self-published something, and then I wrote something else. And then I finally got to the novel with Ellie, which brings me to the Barrens.
Which brings us up to date. And so Ellie, let's go over to you. Where does your story as an author begin?
Kind of with this book in a lot of ways. I mean, my dad was really the story crafter, the storyteller. He fictionalized this account that's in a lot of ways based on my life. But I do have my BA in English, and I grew up really entranced by, movies, stories, books, and kind of culture consumption and media consumption of all varieties. So I thought that going to school for English was the best way to tackle that. And after I graduated, I've kind of been trying to, get more into writing, find my 1,500 words a day, as my dad put it. And yeah, this story has really been something fun for us to tackle together, because it really started off as a short story that my dad had the idea for and started crafting, but then he had to come back to me, obviously, to flesh out an entire novel.
Yeah. So Kurt, so this was originally your brainchild.
Well, yeah. I mean, Ellie went on this 400 or 500 mile canoe trip up in subarctic Canada, and that got my mind going on an idea, which was, two young women go into embark on this trip, and one dies and the other one has to come out with her body and confront the law and the deceased woman's parents. So that was kind of an idea I gave her, and then it kind of blossomed from there. I mean, I was just going to write a short story, a novella, just for fun, and it just turned into something larger, and mostly just because I had to ask Ellie about what it was like to be on the Thalon River in the Barren Lands, And then you have to explore, the backstory of these two women, and they're both lesbians, they're both gay, and I really had to explore what that was with my daughter, which was difficult. I think, it's hard for any parent to talk to their kids about sex,
Right.
and what really happened, and really you don't want to know. So it triggered those conversations. And so what started off as kind of a short story novella morphed into a full-fledged novel with, fleshed out characters, um, and a real love story and story of adventure and death on the barren lands.
Really born from hours and hours of phone calls, drinks, pool, trying to sort out those stories, and my own youth and upbringing as a gay woman, and my experience being on trail, and also like how relationships form on trail differently, and how those bonds force us all closer.
Well, I definitely want to get into the writing process because I am curious about that. But before I do, I mean, I know there's a backstory here. Tell me about this trip you went on, Ellie. I mean, it sounds very cold, kind of canoeing in the subarctic. I was born in Florida, so the cold and I don't get along so well. But tell me about this trip and what motivated you to take it, and then kind of what happened along the way.
Well, I grew up going to a camp in northern Minnesota called Camp Wijiwagan. And developmentally through that camp, you go on just longer and bigger and more technical trips every year. And the select few who get through all those trips and can ultimately afford it get to go to these different areas in Alaska and the Arctic, and some rivers. And I'm not even sure they do the route on the Thalon anymore, but it was about 500 miles through the headwaters to the finish with just 3 other women. And it was daunting and incredible and beautiful, and really not that cold, weirdly enough. Our first about 8 days were some of the hottest, most miserable heat kind of days I've ever experienced, because there's no trees. That's why it's called the Barrens. That no plants grow above a certain level. And so there was no shade. It was, that whole week was just boiling hot, and the sun never goes down. So even sleeping at night would just get boiling hot. But then, of course, the cold sets in as like summer fades, and we were there in the late summer. So the end of our trip got a little chilly.
Yeah. Any interesting experience happened on that trip that made its way into the book?
Oh yeah, I mean, a lot of my kind of experiences confronting certain things and getting away from them, like getting away from dangers, going through sets that I almost dumped but didn't, seeing a bear that decided we weren't interesting, then just wandered away, and portaging along the canyon. And I think one of the reasons that we ended up using the portion of the river that we do in the book is because I made a comment to my dad about how when we were approaching this area of the canyon portage, it was just marked like a normal set, like one we would run on any other map, and the top of it looked like pretty normal and calm, and like you could paddle on a little bit ahead and take a look at it. But we decided to get out and look, and then all of a sudden the walls come up and the water goes down, and it's just all very encompassing and dangerous. But nothing terrible happened to us on our trip. It was more just how many times we got away with things that inspired this idea of like, what if you didn't?
Right. So Kurt, just back over to you. When do you start sort of outlining this, as a potential idea, or thinking of it as a potential idea, for something to write about?
Well, it was just kind of between projects, I guess. And I just thought of the idea, and then I delved into it. To be honest, I mean, normally I really detail out and outline a book and know where it's going to end. Of course, while writing it, characters evolve and the story changes. but I have an endpoint and I know somewhat what the scenes are going to be like. And in this book, you know, there's a river, there's a start and there's an end, and I knew somebody was going to die. And it was kind of weird because it evolved. And, you know, so it's a river. So day one, you're going to be here. Day two, you're going to be here. You're going to hit the canyon, and there's going to be a death. You're going to see a grizzly bear. You're going to see muskox. And it kind of evolved. But then I had to deal with this whole backstory thing. And so most of the book is just one woman by herself, surrounded by nobody else. And I have to do backstory. How do you do that? And, you know, some people do it conversationally. Some people do it as in a dream sequence almost. And I was initially wrote this saying first person, present tense. So I came up with this idea just while I was writing of doing the backstory as these verbal storytelling around the campfire. And it ended up being really fun and unique for me to do. And then, you know, I knew at the end she was going to have to get off the river, but I didn't think about what that was going to happen. And I kind of had to force myself, like, there's a lot of, you know, I'm in a writers group and I've had classes, and there's writers that really hate confronting things, and they hate having things happen to their characters. And you have to force yourself through that. And so, you know, nobody wants to write about a woman coming off a journey and then having to confront the parents of this woman who you were involved with her death. And so that was real kind of organic. And I just kind of went through the process. Parents showed up. What are they going to be like? How are they going to act? And it evolved into this relationship. So that's how that book kind of came together. It was very organic, very unplanned, and very unlike some of the other stuff I like to write.
Yeah. What was it like, Ellie, working with your dad on this? Because imagine you had a lot of conversations about the trip and your experiences, but also, I mean, I imagine, and your father alluded to it, a lot of like personal conversations. What was that process like?
If I had to throw some words at it, I'd probably say challenging, fun, interesting. I think when I came off trail, he was the first and really only person that really wanted to hear my stories about everything that happened on trail, including like the plant life, the animal life, how it felt, and the things I saw, the history of the area that felt just like it's steeped into everything around it. So I was kind of excited to start with that kind of stuff. And that's initially how it started, because, you know, when he was writing the story, he really just needed to focus on the river at its core. It kind of reads like a trip report, let's say, you know, like you have to start at the top of the river and you have to find your way off. And so we kind of started by just going through the river, talking about my experiences, the unique areas along the river, because it's not just the same thing. The term Barrens is a little bit deceptive because it really isn't just the same thing along every stretch of the river. So we started there, just kind of plotting out what that looked like. And then, you know, like you said, you have to go back and kind of think about what creates a character and like create some dialogue and movement. And we started thinking through these vignettes that in a lot of ways were taken from my life and experiences, but also from just general knowledge about what it means to be a gay woman, especially a gay youth. And those were the more challenging conversations, talking about family, coming out, realizing you're gay, what you do when you were trying to figure that out, you know, sexual awakenings, falling in love, heartbreak, abuse, like all these things you end up having to approach honestly and critically and really try to form something that creates a character. And at its core, just you're trying to build an honest person, you know, and
Yeah.
that's what a character is supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, the art of writing, the process of writing, you really have to make yourself very vulnerable, because if you don't, your readers aren't going to buy it, right? They're going to know
Yeah.
that something just isn't authentic. But Ellie, you're doing something even, you know, more I don't know, brave, which is making yourself vulnerable to your dad. You know,
Yeah.
and look, I'm coming from the perspective of, I've got 3 kids, they're 20, we have triplets. You know, just talk of sex in our house, it doesn't happen because we're Catholic, but it's you know, it makes you uncomfortable. I mean, I remember I was talking to my daughter, was bitching about bitching, that's a terrible term. She was complaining very voraciously about the side effects of her birth control. And I'm like, you know, I don't want to hear it. Like, talk to your mom about this stuff.
No, it's
But so,
challenging. It's hard.
you know, but so that's it. And then Kurt, how did you, how did you kind of, as a dad, how do you handle like that type of conversation
Uh,
with your daughter?
you know, you want to, like you said, you kind of want to cover your ears and not hear it. And it was hard, you know, and a couple of the conversations I think we did at a bar over some beers, and Ellie's partner was there, and they were good conversations, but you know, there's certain uncomfortableness to it. And then I had to write um, some scenes based on those discussions, you know, and that was fun actually. But then I have to show it to Ellie to almost get her approval before, because they're they're very personal scenes, and they're difficult scenes, and you know, because one of the stories is of this girl coming of age and all this backstory of her growing up off the grid in Nebraska, and coming out and being shamed and bullied and all that kind of stuff. So um, it was difficult and fun at the same time, and interesting. And yeah, I had to show it to my daughter to get her approval, because it is really close to home.
Yeah. I mean, you know, because again, you're writing something that you want to, other people need to see as authentic. And you know, as writers, we, you know, we let our curiosity kind of do that. And but we also take a risk, you know, of upsetting people, especially when, you know, something is rooted in such a personal story. I mean, I look, I do stand-up comedy, and if when
I'm
I'm
so sorry. I'm so sorry.
when I'm when I'm on stage and I tell, and everything is like about, you know, having triplets and about, you know, being married for 23
Sure.
years, and you know, so I tell stories that are rooted in my reality, and sometimes they cross the line, and my wife, you know, makes me sleep on the couch because I hit a point too close to home. But
Yeah, well, at least you didn't get slapped by Will Smith. So
well, not yet, but that's on my bucket list. Actually, I want to get slapped by Kevin Hart, but you
okay.
know, I'm a little taller than him, so he might need a step stool. But no, I love Kevin Hart. So you know, Kurt, I mean, as a writer, was this the first time you've ever written collaboratively, like with somebody else?
Oh yeah, yeah, no, and even this writing was, you know, I got to do it in the privacy of my own home. I gotta bang out those, you know, 1,000, 1,500 words a day, and get something down on paper. And at least my process is get it down, and you know, that first draft is gonna suck, and then you got to hone it, and then you got to ask questions and go back and forth with Ellie, and then once there, it's something that is, you know, a little bit better than it sucks, then I can start showing it to Ellie and getting some feedback, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. And then Ellie, did you learn anything about yourself during the writing process here? You know, this is, I mean, this is so much of this is built on your story. I mean, what were some big insights into yourself that you learned?
I don't know. I think what what I certainly was confronted with was how I kind of had to reflect on my own story, and how these stories, like, you know, these stories build a character in the book. How do these stories in my own life build me? And reflecting on that can be enlightening and hard, and also make you like question some things. And even like rereading parts of the book, or at least how you know, my dad translated my own experiences, that, you know, that was really challenging. There was some parts that took me a couple days to get the balls up to keep reading at times. So there was a lot of challenges with like confronting my own stories, as translated they are and as fictional as they end up. those experiences are supposed to be honest to, the upbringing, like the childhood and then the young adulthood of a gay woman who struggles with a lot of the things that I struggled with. And so it's like, it's hard to confront those things, but you also try to think about how you've come out the other side a more a holistic person, or if not that, at least a person,
Yeah.
hopefully.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a great read. I want to just pivot from talking to the book about the book, because I always like to, wrap up with questions, again, more designed to get to know who you both are as people. And the first one I always like to start with is just understanding or uncovering what some of your favorite TV shows were when you were a kid. And Kurt, I'm going to go to you first on this one. I imagine the answer is going to be drastically different, but what were some of your favorite TV shows when you were a kid, Kurt?
Oh, really early, Gilligan's Island and Father Knows Best, and yes, Dobie Gillis. I mean, I go back, I'm sorry, to a long way, Hazel, black and white TV, and
Sure.
Mr. Ed.
So many of those shows were shows my brother and I used to watch on, like, I don't know, TBS, when we would go visit my grandparents who didn't have cable.
Right.
They had a TV on the floor next to their hi-fi, little knobs that you'd have to turn, and they had 4 channels or 5 channels. TBS was one.
That's
So
about
we'd watch Gilligan's Island, Petticoat Junction, Mr. Ed,
Yeah,
Green
that's
Acres,
it. Yep,
all those
all
shows.
those.
But I loved.
But also Laughing on Sunday nights was a big thing.
Oh yeah,
And the Ed Sullivan Show,
yeah, all good stuff. Here's my question about Gilligan's Island. And I've asked this to other people who have mentioned Gilligan's Island before, because you're not the first, Kurt.
Right.
If the professor could build a radio made out of coconuts, now they're surrounded by trees on this island. Why not a boat? Why not a boat to get them off the island? A raft, even.
It sounds like your comedy routine.
I'm just,
if you can make a radio, you can make a navigation system, certainly.
My comedy routine isn't nearly that funny. That's the problem. But like, it's like, why not a boat? Why not a raft?
There's a lot of issues with that show. It's a real effort to in suspending belief, or whatever they call it.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, right. And then the crazy cannibals that come out once every season. The cannibals, they threaten everybody.
Where did they come from?
There's a food source on the island that they're not taking advantage of. They just leave.
Right.
It's nuts.
But keep in mind, I was also watching Mr. Ed with a talking horse.
Of course.
And I was watching Green Acres with a talking pig. So
that's right. That's right. Well, Ellie, over to you. When you were a kid, what were some of your favorite TV shows?
Well, honestly, I contrasted a lot between cartoons and slapstick kind of comedy and movies. Watched a lot of Austin Powers together when I was a kid.
Groovy, baby.
Yeah. But then I also watched a lot of horror movies, and I still do. I find that there's a weird amount of intersection between comedy and horror in terms of having to figure out people's anxieties in order to create a reaction. So I watch a lot of really scary stuff, and then immediately after I'll watch some John Candy or something.
Any favorite horror movies you have?
Favorite horror movies, really dark, really spooky. The Witch. What's it? The one with the bees. Oh my God, I'm forgetting the name of it now. But my classics, I always say that I got to go to are The Shining, The Exorcist.
Okay, a little fact that Jack Nicholson was talking about The Shining, and he looks at it more as a comedy movie than a horror movie.
Yeah, and there's a lot to be said about that.
I think Stephen King would agree. He did not like the big screen adaptation.
Yeah, but did you ever see his adaptation? It was
with Steven Weber from Wings? Absolutely. Yeah, it was not great. It's not great because I'm not scared of Steven Weber from Wings. I'm not even scared of Tim Daly from Wings. But the book, The Shining, it's great. I mean, if it's a much I'm a book guy, much better story than the movie. I don't think the movie was bad. But the book was so much better. And then the follow-up, Dr. Sleep, was fantastic.
Yeah, I feel like the movie version of that was a little bit.
Yeah, but I like Ewan McGregor, even though in my mind he's not Obi-Wan Kenobi. Ellie, I'll go to you next with this one. Artists on your favorite playlists. Who do you like to listen to?
Oh, that changes so constantly. I have a thing for 70s music. Glenn Campbell. I was on an ABBA kick the other day. I also really like rap music, Vince Staples, Kendrick Lamar. I like vibing out to jazzy stuff at the end of the night, like Norah Jones and classics like Etta James and Billie Holiday. It really runs the gambit, but if it's good, I'll probably listen to it and have a phase with it for a while.
Very cool. Kurt, over to you. Favorite artist on your playlist?
I'm pretty eclectic too. I mean, I started off in life as kind of a Grateful Dead guy, a Deadhead, and then I morphed into more of the punk scene, Clash and the Ramones and that sort of thing. But nowadays, I was just in Las Vegas about a month ago and saw one of the best concerts I've ever seen, which was Bruno Mars and Anderson .Paak with Silk Sonic.
Mm-hmm.
And for 2 hours, just standing up, dancing, the whole crowd for 2 hours standing up, dancing. It was such a show. It was so much fun.
Very cool. Yeah. I mean, yeah. You mentioned going to a hippie college before, Kurt. So I'm not surprised at the Grateful Dead, but it's a straight contrast to the Clash and the Ramones.
Well, you'd be surprised. The Hampshire College had all sorts of little groups. There's certainly a punk group there, and there's certainly a Deadhead group. I probably didn't fit into either one of them, but they were there.
There's definitely a coven you can join. We saw them doing a seance when we went to visit, and a man on a literal unicycle riding to class, and he looked at us like, "What are you looking at, asshole?"
That's right.
Yeah. And he had a skirt on too, by the way.
And juggling fish, no doubt. Kurt, what lessons about writing or publishing do you feel like you learned or had to learn the hard way?
Well, there's a good question. I make every mistake in the book. From writing a bad query letter to submitting a manuscript that isn't as good as it should be. I managed to get one agent and then get fired and find another agent. So I'm one of these guys that just keeps making more and more mistakes until they finally gets it right. So it's kind of an ugly process for me.
But mistakes are only negative if you don't learn from them, right?
Exactly. And I was in business, I was an entrepreneur and had a million ideas, and thank God one struck, but it's the same thing. You're throwing spaghetti at the wall and hopefully something sticks. So the good lesson, because every author is going to make probably all those mistakes, because you get excited about a first manuscript and you want an agent to read it, and you don't realize that there's just so many mistakes, and the agent's not going to take it on because they don't want to do a month's worth of work just to make you a better author. So at any rate, I'm a big throw spaghetti against the wall and wait for something to stick.
Yeah. And then Ellie, over to you. I mean, any big lessons you learned, maybe the hard way during this process of kind of writing this book with your dad?
That it seems terrifying. I mean, I'm trying to do it now, really. I'm trying to just create a story that actually looks like a story and not just someone trying to write. I don't know. It's really challenging, but I think what I learned is that there's this kind of fallacy that's created, particularly about publishing, where people will work with you to create something, will bug you, will say like, hey, like you said you'd have this chapter on a deadline, or like, let's do this, this, and this. No one really wants to work with you that much. They'd rather have something that's marketable. And so you really do have to like make sure you can self-edit, or at least have a good circle of people who will edit around you, or get involved with a book club who will edit your stuff. Because yeah, your editor does not actually want to edit. He wants to edit for sale.
Yeah, and you know, that's I learned it probably the hard way after submitting a couple manuscripts. But you know, the book business, it's a, you know, people are trying to make money. It's a it's a business, and so the query letter has to be relevant and on trend. And so, you know, I learned the hard way to start, you know, looking at Publishers Marketplace and the Monday deals, and to see what people are buying. And you know, nobody's gonna take you on unless, especially as a debut author, unless they think they can make money and sell a lot of these copies. So you can't go to them with a book, you know, about a depressed teenager that, you know, wants to get out of his life and is very introverted, but never does get out of his life and spends the rest of his life working on a computer screen. I mean, that's just, it may be a good introverted book with a lot of insights into life, but you're not going to get one of those, you know, 200 or 250 agents in New York paying attention, because it just doesn't, you know, it just doesn't sing in 2 sentences on Publishers Marketplace.
Yeah. Last one up would be Kurt. Any words of wisdom you would want to share with your younger self? If you could write a letter to your younger self, what would you tell your younger self?
Well, I guess the short answer is stop doing stupid shit. I mean, I was one of those. I was that kid in the football photo that, you know, raised his middle finger and got in trouble with the principal. I had real problem with controlling my what's the word? You know, I just stopped doing stupid shit. But in terms of like being a writer, impulse control problems. But in terms of being a writer, you know, what I tell my younger self is that to read really what you like. You know, so much of being in college and even high school, they kind of throw things at you that are supposed to be classics, that are supposed to inspire you. But in fact, those classics are outdated in a lot of cases, and they don't inspire you, and they're difficult to read. You know, try reading Shakespeare and you're, you know, looking up every word and every other line. That's not going to engage you in writing or reading for that matter. So it wasn't until college that I decided to start reading what I like. And then what I discovered later in life is that writing is, in a sense, muscle memory. So if you're reading what you like and reading a lot of it, that translates into your writing style. And so one of the things I don't do is read people that I don't think are good writers, or that you know, stories that I particularly like, because I think they're gonna mess me up. They're gonna mess up my muscle memory for writing.
Yeah. And Ellie, over to you. Any words of advice you would offer your younger self if you could whisper into her ear?
I turned 24 in August. I'm still trying to figure it out in a lot of ways, but I think I tell myself kind of the same advice I'm trying to take myself right now, which is stop taking everything so seriously sometimes. Stop taking yourself so seriously sometimes. You know, ultimately, if you just keep moving forward and try to have fun sometimes, things will work out as they were meant to pretty much either way, but you might be a little bit happier at the end of it.
All right, very good. Well,
keep moving forward.
Keep moving forward. Not a bad piece of advice. Well, the book is called The Barrens, a novel of love and death in the Canadian Arctic. The authors are Kurt and Ellie Johnson. Kurt and Ellie, where can people go to learn more about you? I guess, Kurt, go first. Do you have a social media, or do you have a website?
Yeah, I mean, you can go to Kurt Johnson, KURT Johnson books.com. and that shows you some places to buy it. Certainly in the Minnesota Midwest area, you can go to your independent bookstore and get it. Otherwise, it's available at online sources.
Very good. Ellie, over to you. Any place people can go to learn more about you?
Our Instagrams at Kurt Johnson Books and at LEJ418. And also just Google the Barrens book. It will pop up and you have our publisher's info right there, all your online retailers, and go pick up a copy. It comes out May 3rd. We're really pumped about it, and leave us a review. Really appreciate it.
And if you need the cover, here it is. The Barrens. I love this cover. Very nice cover. Yeah. Very engaging. So, all right, here it is. The Barrens. Well, thank you, Kurt and Ellie. Appreciate you taking the time to chat with me on Uncorking a Story.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you.